Hi there, hi, hello again, lovely to see you, and welcome to another Thursday Reads with me. Over the last few weeks I've been reading from my novels, as you might know. If not, check them out on YouTube, there are all my readings. I've read from Love Lost in Time. Last week I read from Dark Deceit. And I've already read from Highland, one of my Scottish Chronicle novels. And today I'll be reading from Highland Captive, the second in the Highland Chronicles Tales novels of independent books. They're standalone stories set at different times in different places in Scotland. And Highland Captive is it takes place in medieval Scotland in 1298, to be precise, after the Battle of Falkirk, which the Scots sadly lost. It is a tale of a young lady who loses everything. She loses her father, she loses her home, and she's being abducted to marry a rich English lord, something she's not very happy about. And then she's rescued by a young Scottish knight from an island in the west, close to Mull, the island of Eorsa, where he has his keep. But she's not altogether happy with it. She doesn't want to be rescued. She doesn't want to sit around all day twiddling her thumbs. And she wonders if her father's connections, various lords close to the last Scottish king, might be able to help her a bit more than poor knight. So I'll read a few excerpts. His name is Cathie Dunn, and she is Isabel de Mary of the de Mary family. Fictional, of course. Right, here we go. Let's get stuck in. Chapter 1, Falkirk, 1298. The whirring sound grew louder and louder until it was cut off as screams echoed around the field of battle. Scores of arrows had hit their targets. Warriors and horses fell in agony at the impact of the latest round. Men stumbled over dying friends and strangers before they crouched once more, trying to cover themselves with their shields from the continuing onslaught of the longbows loosened by Lancastrian and Welsh soldiers on the far side. Cathie MacDougall heard the next volley in the air, but he could not risk shifting his attention. Instead, he kept staring into the eyes of the English foot soldier, calculating the man's next move. Half hidden beneath the helmet, the cold, grey gaze pierced him like the slash he had just taken to the side of his right thigh from the man's axe. A gargoyle grin marred the soldier's face as he pulled back the weapon, raising it to strike again. Cathie stumbled over the dead body of his horse, a lance sticking from the postillion's chest. Blood pooled around the once strong neck. The whinnying sound echoed in his head, wrenching his heart, but there was no time to mourn his trusted companion of the last 4 years. His mind went numb with the pain tearing through his body. The gash in his thigh burned, and with much effort he raised his shield to deflect another hit, and another. He thrust his sword towards the enemy, but the soldier, unhurt and swift in movement, easily avoided it. Cathie stumbled backwards, desperate not to give up, while his body screamed for rest. He clenched his teeth, ignoring it. The soldier's swings were strong, and dropping his own shield meant certain death. If not from the madman in front of him, the arrows from the damned longbows that rained over the field would no doubt catch him. How the Welsh would wage war for Edward and against their fellow Celts was beyond him. His leg buckled beneath him as he tried to keep his foothold on the boggy ground. Warm blood seeped through his hose. His vision swam. Cathie slipped, propping up the fall with his right hand, knocking his sword from his grip. It landed just out of reach. He swore, raising his shield again. The soldier's grin widened. Prepared to meet the devil, he lifted his axe. There's the first bit of Highland Captive. Now we're going up to Loch Ness, to the keep of Owen de Murray, and that is a couple of weeks later, late July 1298. Isabel paced the hall, clenching and unclenching her hands. 4 long months she had been waiting for a word from her father, yet none had arrived. Only rumours had spread like forest fires. Rumours of clashes and skirmishes, of destroyed crops and castles. Nothing out of the ordinary. Then news came of a full battle, with thousands of men dead or fleeing. But true details were scarce. You cannot trust word of mouth, father had always said, and Isabel usually heeded his advice. No good came from thinking, what if? Yet here she was, her mind in turmoil. Outwardly she showed the usual strength her folk had come to know of her. But only Owen, their steward, knew better. But he would never divulge her misgivings to the few remaining inhabitants of the keep. Women, old men and children. All men of fighting age had followed father. That's the setting where Isabel finds herself at home, still waiting months later. Then we're moving on to mid-August 1298, same place. Isabel's eyes flew open and she lay still, not daring to move. The shutters rattled in the breeze that swept up from the water, bringing with it an early autumn chill. The sound had kept her awake well into the early hours. Now, desperate for sleep to banish a nagging worry about her father's safety, she listened for a different sound, one that had alerted her. She was used to the clattering of the shutters and the sleepless nights they often brought, living on the shore of a Highland loch surrounded by hills. But the sound of metal clashing in the middle of the night was entirely different. Had a fight broken out inside the keep? No, not likely. A few men of fighting age had followed her father south, but none had thus far returned. Only a few had stayed for his safety. But there was always the one person who had listened into a conversation with Owen the other day. Her steward had been keeping a watchful eye on everything that happened. Had he finally caught the traitor? She pulled aside the thick curtains surrounding her bed. Slowly she allowed her eyes to adjust to the slivers of moonlight streaming through the gaps in the shutters. A moment later she recognised the outlines of the few items in her chamber. The heavy chest at the far wall that held her bedding and shifts, the hooks just behind the door to the landing from which her gowns hung in neat order. A small table and stools by the window. All seemed normal, safe, calm. Had it been but a dream? The sound of a sword drawn from its sheath startled her anew, followed by clashing of steel. After what seemed like hours, but could only have been moments, a man's groan followed, quickly muffled. Her heart pounding in her ears, she pulled her skin dew from beneath her pillow, drawing small comfort from the solid way the dirk felt in her hand. On tiptoes she inched towards the door, ignoring the coolness of the wooden floorboards on her bare feet. It brought goosebumps on her skin, or were they from the danger lurking outside? Of course her door was unlocked. She had never needed to lock herself in. Father had left a few guards to protect the keep. A high wooden palisade surrounded it, a style father favoured. But given the sounds reaching her, perhaps it was time to lock the door after all, to allow herself time to think. She raised a hand to turn the heavy key when the latch shifted upwards, only clicking briefly, as if moved by a ghostly hand. Rooted to the spot, her eyes followed the latch as it was lifted, excruciatingly slowly, and the door nudged open. That's it for this scene. And now we have a scene from chapter 4, at which point she is with her abductors. They are travelling south, and she is, of course, chained and tied to whoever's just in charge. It's night time. A silence descended over the camp. Brodie appeared at the entrance to his tent and waved her over. "Come, my lady, 'tis time to rest. We've an early start tomorrow to cut across into the hills." Away from the water, deeper into Scotland, across the hills towards Stirling. Isabel gulped down the last of her ale, put the cup on the floor and rose. Time was running out. Nestled into the usual space beside Brodie, but not too close, yet still firmly tied in like every night, Isabel shifted, unable to lie in comfort despite the soft furs around her. Soon enough Brodie snored, something she had come accustomed to during the last few nights. The next day they would move away from her familiar territory. The wilderness of the mountains did not worry her, but the thought of other English patrols did. And she knew nobody in Stirling or elsewhere in the lowlands. She sighed. Still, she had to. A thud sounded from outside, followed by light footsteps near her tent. Isabel leaned on her elbow, careful not to move the rope that bound her to her captor, and tilted her head. What was going on? Not wanting to wake Brodie, perhaps he had lied, and it could be father coming to save her after all. She focused her eyes on the tent flap. The canvas moved, she was certain. A breeze found its way through the gap. She held her breath. For certain, no wild animal would know how to unlace the ties. She could make out the glow of the dying fire in the clearing, and in its path, the moving shadow of a man. Definitely not Beast, then. Breathing lightly, she kept still, watching the flap open completely. The man moved in without making a sound. Another shadow, bigger than the first and struggling to squeeze through, followed him. Christ's blood. Isabel swallowed, but her throat was dry with fear. None of the shapes resembled father, too broad. One tall shadow slid behind her and a hand clamped her mouth, stifling a scream. Would she have wanted to scream? At the same time, something hard crashed onto Brodie's head from the other side. She recoiled. Who were these men? Friend or foe? Well, thank you for joining me again. Highland Captive is available on Amazon, like all my other books, in Kindle ebook and paperback formats. It is priced at $2.99, £1.99, and free to read on Kindle Unlimited. So if you fancy a read, an escape to the Scottish Highlands and Islands this time as well, head over to Amazon and check it out. Thank you very much for your time again, and I hope to see you soon. Take care and be safe. Bye.